Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now Tyson Fury was there to watch Daniel Dubois' dominant display over Schneider, and obviously Daniel Dubois got the victory. He won in stunning fashion, getting the knockout as he always does, apart from obviously that Kevin Johnson fight. But ultimately Daniel Dubois got the victory and Tyson Fury was there to see it. Now obviously Tyson Fury cannot do an interview without talking about Anthony Joshua because that's the biggest fight in boxing, aside from nothing. That's the biggest fight in boxing. So he was asked about Anthony Joshua, and obviously that fight is going to happen next year. 2 fights in 2021. Likely the first one in June or July, the next one in December, just before Christmas. So those 2 fights are set for next year, especially after the WBC mandatory. Dillian Whyte suffered a shock loss to Alexander Povetkin. So Dillian Whyte is no longer mandatory to Tyson Fury and has a rematch with Alexander Povetkin, meaning that Deontay Wilder is only the fighter in the way of Tyson Fury to him getting to Anthony Joshua. So as long as he beats Deontay Wilder, Joshua is right there for Tyson Fury. But Deontay Wilder has been silent. Deontay Wilder hasn't really said all that much since his loss to Tyson Fury, which has sparked some rumours that maybe he doesn't want the fight. Maybe he doesn't want to rematch Tyson Fury and risk the same thing happening again. So if Deontay Wilder does not want it, Tyson Fury has explained that he wants to fight Anthony Joshua in December. Not wait till next year, not have an interim bout. He wants to fight Anthony Joshua as soon as possible. If Deontay Wilder does not want it, then he wants Anthony Joshua. And first of all, can that fight happen? Well, yes, of course it can, because if Deontay Wilder does not want it, then Tyson Fury has no obligations to any other fighter. He can go and fight whoever he wants, but Anthony Joshua is not in that same position. He has 2 mandatories, Kubrat Pulev and Alexander Usyk. Pulev, I don't believe is going to step aside anymore. I don't believe he'll wait. He'll want to fight Anthony Joshua. He will want to exercise his mandatory position. So will Usyk. So is there going to have to be a belt dropped, especially if it happened in December? Because I don't see how Anthony Joshua can get out of this IBF mandatory with Kubrat Pulev, especially where talks are underway, deals are being made, venues, dates, all of that, finances is all being sorted out now. So I don't see how this fight can happen in December with the IBF title on the line. Now, that does depend heavily on Deontay Wilder not taking the fight with Tyson Fury, which I believe he is going to, because I believe what Deontay Wilder is doing with all of his silence, all his social media silence, is I don't think he wants to post anything, because he knows as soon as he does, Tyson Fury is going to have something to say about it. He doesn't want to give Tyson Fury the opportunity to react to something he said, to say something about what Deontay Wilder is posting. So that is why I believe Deontay Wilder has been so quiet. That is the reason why he hasn't been on social media, because he knows Tyson Fury is right there, which again means that Tyson Fury is living rent-free in the head of Deontay Wilder. Tyson Fury is focused on Deontay Wilder, but he also has Anthony Joshua in his eyeline. Deontay Wilder is solely focused on Tyson Fury, but I don't believe that's enough. I don't believe that Deontay Wilder can beat Tyson Fury in any other way than landing one big punch, one lucky punch. That's all it takes in the heavyweight division. We have been reminded of that recently with Povetkin and Whyte. But ultimately, do we really believe that Wilder is going to be able to set that punch up? Is Tyson Fury going to have a lapse in concentration where he allows that to happen? I don't believe so. I think that Tyson Fury can outbox Deontay Wilder. Tyson Fury can outfight Deontay Wilder, so he has the beating of him. Do we really need to see a third fight when realistically Tyson Fury won the first one? Realistically, I mean definitely, Tyson Fury won the second one in extremely dominant and conclusive fashion. So we don't need to see a third fight. We would need to see one if, say, it was another close points decision, or it was a good fight and someone just got clipped with one big punch. But it wasn't that. Tyson Fury completely dominated Deontay Wilder, meaning we don't need a third fight. So obviously Deontay Wilder has the opportunity to exercise his right to have a rematch with Tyson Fury. That is there. But if he does not want it, then Tyson Fury is free to go and fight whoever he wants. Before, it was if he doesn't fight Deontay Wilder, then he should fight Dillian Whyte. But Dillian Whyte is now focused on a rematch with Alexander Povetkin, which I believe he will win, but then he will be mandatory in, August 2021. So ultimately, Dillian Whyte is not going to be fighting Tyson Fury or the WBC World Champion probably this year or next year, meaning that Undisputed is right there for the taking for Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. So you would have to believe that if Deontay Wilder does step aside, he doesn't want the fight, and Anthony Joshua is left with a decision to make, Kubrat Pulev or Tyson Fury. Eddie Hearn did explain the way they could get around that is Undisputed, so all of the belts on the line, and then as soon as the fight has happened and there is an undisputed champion, the IBF belt or the WBO belt is vacated, then the top two get to fight for that belt, which I think is a good idea, meaning that Undisputed can happen, but the division does not stagnate through mandatories and all of that, because if you think about it, in 2021, if there is Undisputed, all of the belts on the line, there is going to be a WBA mandatory coming up, there is already an IBF and WBO mandatory. A WBC mandatory will follow as well in August 2021. So the division will stagnate when it comes to mandatory challenges and their opportunities, because Undisputed will be happening. But if there is something in the contract where Undisputed happens, then say the IBF, say the WBO belt is vacated by the champion, giving the next in line the opportunity to fight for it, then that is how Undisputed can happen. That is how it can happen in December, because if Anthony Joshua fights Tyson Fury for Undisputed in December and makes Kubrat Pulev wait, then maybe in February or March, the IBF will be vacated and Kubrat Pulev would be free to go and fight for the IBF vacant title against Charles Martin, who is number 2 in the IBF for some reason. But anyway, that is what would happen with the IBF. With the WBO, it would be Usyk and whoever is next in the WBO rankings. But ultimately, Usyk has to fight Derek Chisora next, which will likely happen in October, meaning that Anthony Joshua will fight 2 months after that. So ultimately, that fight between Anthony Joshua and Usyk for the WBO mandatory, or maybe Tyson Fury, dependent upon who wins the undisputed fight, if it did happen in December, then that would be able to be done. I mean, Usyk would be ready to fight at a similar sort of time to the undisputed champion. So maybe the WBO belt would not have to be vacated if that happened. Maybe if Anthony Joshua fights Kubrat Pulev, he will have to vacate the WBO belt. If Anthony Joshua does not fight Kubrat Pulev and Tyson Fury instead, I mean, Usyk is fighting around the same time, so he will not have to vacate the WBO title, but he will the IBF. So ultimately, they are going to have to vacate one of the titles or have something put into the contract where they fight for that title, then it gets vacated the day after, so that the next two in line can go and fight for it. It seems like that could happen no matter what they do, so whether it happens in December or next year doesn't really make that much of a difference. But again, that does solely depend on whether Deontay Wilder wants to exercise his right to have a rematch with Tyson Fury, which I believe he will. But Tyson Fury nonetheless has said he wants Anthony Joshua in December if Deontay Wilder does not want it. I believe that Deontay Wilder will take that fight. He can do nothing else. If he doesn't take that fight, he's not going to get a world title opportunity for a very long time. So ultimately, Deontay Wilder has one chance with Tyson Fury. If he does not take it, then I don't know where he is. No man's land, ultimately. But ultimately, this fight is something that is very important to Tyson Fury. If it can happen in December, then he'd like to do that. But ultimately, I believe the fight will happen in June or July. Nonetheless, it's good to see a positive attitude from Tyson Fury towards this fight. Tyson Fury wants it as soon as possible. Anthony Joshua wants it as soon as possible. Genuine 50-50 for the undisputed fight. Two fighters who always find a way. Guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thanks, guys.